taking it to the next level and really amping up how much nutrient-dense plant food I was eating just made my body thrive. It is shorts weather, but it's also that perfect temperature, I think is a perfect temperature when you can wear shorts and a long sleeve, shorts and a sweatshirt. It's wonderful. And today I'm drinking coffee. We're back. This is a whipped coffee. Can we just, I don't know if it focused, but can we appreciate the colors of the cup and the coffee? Beautiful. Now, I made one of these this morning. Now, I know whipped coffee isn't the hot thing right now. It was a hot thing 2 or 3 years ago when everyone was at home and didn't know what to do with themselves, so they started baking bread and making whipped coffee. I did not jump on that bandwagon. I currently don't have any coffee in the house, so this morning I was like, I have instant espresso powder. Let's make a whipped coffee. So I didn't have a recipe off the top of my head, so I Googled it. And I went to the Pioneer Woman's website, and the recipe said 2 tablespoons of white sugar, 2 tablespoons of instant coffee, 2 tablespoons of hot water, half cup of milk. Off the bat, I was like, that is not enough milk for that amount of coffee. But I went ahead and did it, and I did 3/4 cups of milk, and I ended up ending more milk at the end because your whipped coffee there's still a lot that sits on the top, even if you stir. So 2 tablespoons of espresso powder is a lot. Okay, I drink it on an empty stomach, which sometimes I'll drink a latte on an empty stomach, and I know that's not the best. It often gives me a bellyache, but today I did it, and oh my goodness, I was so caffeinated. I was like, I need to eat something. So this afternoon, I just did 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of instant espresso powder, and 1 full cup of milk. And it's nice. It's like, what's it taste like? I have a sample. I think it's perfect. The other one was so intense. It also makes a difference that I'm using espresso powder instead of just instant coffee. If you guys are interested in the recipe, I will leave it typed up below. But today, what you've clicked on the video for, today we're talking about my experience with eating a plant-based whole food diet. Now, plant-based whole food diet is very similar to vegan. People may use the two interchangeably, but with plant-based whole food diet, there's a lot more focus on eating plant-based whole foods. Whereas there are a ton of boxed or bagged foods that are considered vegan just because there's no animal products used in them. But like Oreos are technically vegan, but they are not plant-based whole foods. So plant-based is just what it sounds like. Plant-based. It's made from plants. And whole food is referring to minimal refinement of the foods. So you're eating the actual fruits, the actual vegetables. Maybe you're cooking them into something, but you're eating a lot of like whole grains, seeds, perhaps. Basically anything that you could find in nature. Now, I'm not an expert on this topic, and the way I got into this was I ended up watching a documentary called Forks Over Knives. And it follows this gentleman who's sick and tired of being sick and tired, and so he's Australian, but he comes to the US. I don't know if that's just because we have a high obesity rate. And this was years ago. I don't even remember what year it was. I watched this documentary in 2020, and he spent however long on a juice diet. Editing Rachel here. I did watch Forks Over Knives, but I am also referencing Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead is the one that follows the gentleman who comes to America and juices his way across the land. So both are very interesting. Both focus on plant-based, whole foods, and good quality foods. So I will leave both of those linked down below for you guys, but I just wanted to clarify that for you guys. Back to the episode. He was supported by physicians. So it was to make sure that he was taking in nutrients that he needed. He wasn't just like off doing this crazy thing all on his own. He was being monitored, but he was just consuming juices, like juicing fresh fruits and fresh veggies. And I'm sure he took some supplements too, but it followed him across the country. And like there were some discussions with doctors and experts and athletes and farmers about like athletes and some other individuals' experience in their improved performance going from a traditional Western diet, like meat and potatoes, to plant-based. So no dairy, no meat. It was all like fruits, veggies, plant-based meats, plant-based dairy products, all of that. And then there were some experiments, like I'm no expert, so I didn't look into like the legitimacy of all of these studies that they did. But there had been some correlation between increased blood flow throughout the body with a plant-based whole food diet versus a traditional Western diet. And then I'm glad they brought this into it also. They spent some time talking to a farmer. I think he was just a chicken farmer. And the discussion came up about the quality of our animal products, like commercial, everything you're going to buy in your traditional grocery store versus small local farms, and just how massive chicken farms versus homegrown chicken farms. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but like pasture raised chickens where they are let outside every day and they eat the diet that God intended for them instead of a vegetarian diet or a grain-fed diet, which is interesting because chickens aren't naturally vegetarian. They eat bugs. They eat plants and bugs. So from watching that, I was also at a point where I was working from home and I could feel that my relationship with food was slipping. I was overeating a lot. I was eating a lot when I wasn't hungry. I wanted more salty and fatty and sugary foods versus eating more wholesome fruits and veggies and whole meals. And so I was also at a point of some level of desperation where I was like, I can't fall back into my binge eating, into my chronic overeating, into food addiction. And so I gave it a loose try. Now, I was not monitored by doctors. As you can tell, I did no heavy-duty research on this. I just kind of winged it. So I knew I wasn't going to cut out dairy products and meat products completely because I knew that's not what I wanted to do, and I didn't envision that being sustainable. So my goal was breakfast, lunch, and snacks were going to be plant-based whole food. And then I would put an emphasis on fruits and veggies and whole grains at supper time, but I didn't have any issue having meat at supper time. So I also didn't limit how much I could eat. For breakfast, I often had oatmeal. I tried chia pudding a few times. I would do pancakes. So a ton of oatmeal, and a good amount of like pancakes or breakfast muffins or breakfast cookies that were a vegan recipe. So like almond milk or almond milk or oat milk. And then I would use flax eggs versus chicken eggs. And what a flax egg is you take ground flaxseed, you mix it with water, and you let it sit for several minutes, and it kind of gels up. So it becomes like the binding agent that eggs are for. And then for snacks, I did a lot of fruit, sometimes veggies, sometimes like veggies with hummus. I ate a lot of hummus, a lot of tortillas with hummus, a lot of veggies with hummus, a lot of dried fruit. So figs, dates with peanut butter, For lunch, I oftentimes had quesadillas. I did not give up cheese for lunch. Cheese was allowed. I allowed myself to have cheese at lunch. So I had a ton of quesadillas, and I would put cheese and usually spinach and red onion, or whatever onion I had, but oftentimes red onion, sometimes like some peppers or some mushrooms, depending on what veggies I had in my house at the time. Sometimes I ate a lot of toast for breakfast, or for lunch I would have usually like 2 pieces of toast, one with peanut butter, one with avocado. And then another big lunch item for me was rice with a bunch of fresh veggies, and then I would put olive oil over that, like extra virgin olive oil, so it has that extra flavor to it. So I would have a big bowl of rice with onion, avocado, diced up bell pepper, cucumber, tomato, kind of, again, whatever I had in the kitchen. Sometimes I would do noodles, so I would allow myself to have a big bowl of noodles. Sometimes it would be ramen. And with the ramen, I would often put like green peas in there, something to just, a vegetable to feed myself more nutrients. Sometimes it would be just pasta with red sauce. Sometimes I would buy meatless meatballs from like Aldi and have pasta with red sauce and meatballs for lunch. And then afternoon snack, it was usually very similar to the morning snack. Tortilla with hummus, fruit. I'm trying to think back. Smoothies. I had a lot of smoothies. My smoothies often don't contain milk and don't contain yogurt. So that was easy for me to make with sometimes fresh, but usually frozen berries, a banana, spinach, chia seeds, water, and a sweetener, so maple syrup or honey. I also think I drank more coffee at that time. And for me, coffee is usually a latte. So I would usually drink a coffee in the morning and in the afternoon. And the milk, that having a milky coffee drink is heavier. And of course, the milk has calories, it has energy in it versus just black coffee. So I would usually have a morning and an afternoon coffee. And I tried using plant-based milks in my lattes, and almond milk for me is like trash in a latte. Like I said in last week's episode, the last episode, I'm a cow's milk gal. So almond milk didn't cut it. I had read somewhere that someone thought cashew milk was like the closest plant-based milk they had experienced, closest to cow's milk. Tried that. I do not agree with that at all. And then oat milk is what I tried next, and that was a lot better than almond milk. It wasn't quite cow's milk, but I eventually ended up doing like half oat milk, half cow's milk, because of the texture and the sweetness and the creaminess of cow's milk. You just can't replicate it. And I did a little bit of matcha lattes in there, same as what I was drinking in the last episode. And I would often snack more than just once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Like I would have maybe some dates and peanut butter, or I'd have a piece of toast with peanut butter. But then a couple hours later, I might still be hungry, but it's not quite lunchtime. So I would have another snack. But then when it came to dinner time, again, I did a lot of similarly what I did for lunch, a lot of quesadillas. I did some eggs sometimes, but I could feel if I just had like eggs for supper, like cheesy scrambled eggs with toast, I would oftentimes get cravings to eat a lot after that in the evening. Whereas if I had a plant-based whole food meal for supper, I didn't feel like I had as many cravings. So I stuck a lot to rice and pasta, a lot of potatoes. I forgot for lunch I would do sometimes like I would cut up a russet potato or a sweet potato, and I would toss it in oil and seasonings and just have a bunch of fries. for lunch, which isn't exactly a full lunch, but it would keep me full for an hour or two, and then I would have another snack. And so then sometimes potatoes for supper, and then I tried some meat alternatives, so Impossible Meat, Beyond Meat, whichever one is the pea protein one versus the soy one. I think Impossible is the pea protein meat alternative. I would get like the ground beef version. And so I would make like Korean beef, or I don't remember exactly everything I made. Or I would do just a bunch of stir fries with a nice sauce and put that over rice. I tried a lot of my normal meals, but I would do meatless. So I would do fajitas just without the chicken, and I'd have all of my onion and bell peppers, tons of veggies over rice with some shredded cheese, some salsa, some sour cream. And so that's how I did suppers a lot of times. And then again, there may have been some snacking in the evening. I did not cut out chocolate. Chocolate oftentimes has a milk product in it, but I never cut out chocolate. And then I have a recipe book that is vegan, and there are a couple of muffin recipes in there. Like I mentioned, some of those I would have for breakfast, or they were a great snack, or they were sweet, so it would satisfy a sweet tooth in the evening. And so that is the adventure that I started upon. And I would never stop myself, like when I would be going out with someone else, or if I went to someone's house and we had food, we had a meal, I wouldn't say no. If we were having burgers, I wouldn't be like, no, I'm not going to have a burger. I would focus a lot on eating more veggies, eating more grains, than just the meats that were an option. And throughout all of my day, I did eat a lot of fats. Like I mentioned, lots of peanut butter, lots of avocado. I would not skimp on olive oil if I was having it over a salad. And I can't remember how long I did that. It was probably a good year. So going from 2020 into 2021. And then it helped me a lot. And I didn't count calories. I didn't say, okay, no more than one snack in between meals. I didn't do any of that. Like if I felt hungry, I would eat. And I didn't worry about how much peanut butter I was eating. I didn't worry about the fats I was eating. I just focused on whole grains, whole foods, lots of fruits, lots of veggies. And I think that freedom, one, was good for just like allowing myself to eat when I want to eat. And sometimes I would eat when I knew I wasn't hungry. And I think that was also healthy, just like not restricting myself, like allowing myself to eat. But like I said, I was really focusing on nutrient dense foods. And throughout that time, I did not gain any more weight. And so I realized my theory, this is only me, I'm the only one that did this, and this is just from my experience, I had a lot fewer cravings. And my theory is that my body was, because I was eating plant-based whole foods, I feel like I'm saying that a lot, because I was eating such nutrient-dense whole foods and fewer refined foods where nutrients are often stripped away, my body was actually getting the nutrients that it needed and wanted. So I wasn't having cravings. While I was in the midst of, it was within like the first few months of me eating a plant-based whole food diet, I went out with a couple of friends, and my one girlfriend mentioned like my nails looked really healthy and strong. And so I was like, oh. And also my skin stayed pretty clear. So my skin is really acne prone. And when I started eating majority plant-based whole food, my skin started to clear up. So there were a lot of benefits even aside from helping manage binge eating and just wanting to eat and craving food, like my body got healthier. And that goes in line with my theory of my body getting the nutrients that it needed and it wanted. And so my body was able to thrive like it hadn't before because I was putting in such nutrient dense foods versus how I'd been eating in the past, which how I was eating in the past wasn't necessarily bad. I didn't eat a ton of junk food. Like I made sure to have a veggie with lunch and dinner, and I had a fruit or two every day. And I ate whole grains. I always had whole grain bread, whole grain rice, whole grain pasta, but taking it to the next level and really amping up how much nutrient dense plant food I was eating just made my body thrive. So I knew that I didn't want to stay plant-based whole food for the rest of my life. Even though I knew there were so many benefits to it, I wanted to be able to bring back in meat and dairy. I didn't cut out, like I said, I didn't cut out much dairy, but I wanted to be able to have like a full cow's milk latte. And part of that for me was that I knew I needed to start incorporating animal products in more and more because I didn't want to feel guilty or like I was failing if and when I did eat animal products. And that's just a personal thing for me. Like I knew that would happen if I waited too long before introducing chicken and beef and everything else back into my diet slowly. So I wanted to be able to have eggs and bacon and toast for breakfast, and I wanted to be okay with eating meat at lunchtime, and I wanted to be okay with eating cheese sticks as part of my snacks. So for me, and part of the thing is I don't exactly remember when I transitioned to eating and incorporating more animal products into my diet. And I think that's a good sign. I did it so slowly and undramatically. There was no catastrophe. I wasn't at a war with myself. And so even to this day, I still focus on whole grains, whole foods, vegetables, fruits. And sometimes I feel like I do start slipping because sometimes when you eat a lot of sweet and salty and fatty foods and like refined foods, like you're eating pizza and mac and cheese and ice cream and desserts and all these luxurious foods that we enjoy, and probably some of you can relate, I don't want to eat a vegetable. I don't necessarily want to eat a fruit. I don't necessarily want to eat the more nutrient dense foods. And so that is when I know, like, okay, let's put a bigger focus on plant-based whole foods. Like, let's start over. Let's start eating more oatmeal versus toast in the morning. And that may not sound wrong, but for me, I can tell a difference when I eat a bowl of oatmeal that I've mixed in some yummy things versus a piece of toast with peanut butter. I still eat both, but oatmeal is less refined than my bread, even if I make my own homemade bread. So oatmeal, and then having a nice bowl of rice with lots of veggies, but then the fat from the avocado and olive oil just make it really satisfying to eat. So for me, I can tell if I start like backsliding into just eating what tastes good versus putting a focus on those natural foods and feeding my body the nutrients that it needs and it wants. Will plant-based whole food, a focus on that in your diet, work for everyone? I don't know. But I do think putting a focus on plants and whole grains and whole foods and opting for better quality food, better quality ingredients does have an impact on our bodies. Because you are what you eat. But that's how our body remakes itself. It creates cells and it flushes itself out, and it's a beautiful machine. But just like your car, just like machines, they work better if you put better quality products in it. So, food for thought. So, have you ever eaten a vegan diet? Have you ever maybe gone vegetarian? Do you or have you eaten a plant-based whole food diet? What is or was your experience with it? If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and leave me a comment. Am I advocating for a plant-based whole food diet? No. Maybe it's something you'd like to look into. It really helped me personally, but another thing that I gained out of the experience was focusing on quality. So when I do buy meat products, when I do buy dairy products, I try to get pasture-raised eggs. So there's cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised. Cage-free, they're still in a building. They're not in cages. They don't have access to the outdoors. Free-range, they're still in a big building. They're outside of a cage. They have a door or two. They have doors to go outside, but there's no guarantee that they go outside. Pasture-raised eggs are from chickens that actually go outside and they eat a natural diet. They do have access to a shelter, but they have the most access to live the life that God intended them to have. And then for milk, a similar situation. If I can get milk from pasture-raised cows, if I can get meat products either from a local farm or that say they are, I will opt for like free-range chicken. And with all of that, I know that it's more expensive and it's not economically feasible for everyone, so I understand that. So I don't do that all the time. The milk that is in my whipped coffee is just commercial milk. Nothing special. But if I can, I do want to get better quality foods and ingredients. I like to make homemade butter sometimes, and I have a local store where I can get cream from pasture-raised cows that has no extra ingredients, just cream, and I can make homemade butter from that. And I've started opting for whole milk. I don't know. I understand why we have 2%, 1% skim. Basically, it's because of calories. Somewhere along the line, we realized that there is fat normally in milk. And if we take the fat out, there are fewer calories. So we can drink more or drink the same and have extra calories in our daily diet to spend elsewhere. But whole milk is how I believe God intended milk to be. So, and it's more delicious. Fat equals flavor. I cook. Fat equals flavor. And it's creamier. Have you ever gone from like 1% to 2% and you're like, wow, this is creamier? So I often go for whole milk now. I often go for the fattier yogurts. I like full fat cheeses. I just don't want to miss out on that flavor. That's just me. So in summary, for me, I find it beneficial to focus on plant-based whole foods, fruits, veggies, grains, healthy oils, but also if I am using animal products, and this applies to your fruits, veggies, and grains and plant products too, getting good quality, getting animal products from animals that had good quality of life, that ate a natural diet, that were treated well. Because I think if the animal doesn't eat well, isn't treated well, is in a stressful environment, that trickles down into the animal product. That's my opinion. So, quality food, quality of the food. If this is your first time stopping over to my channel or listening to my podcast, I'm Rachel. You're listening to I'm Bringing Healthy Back. If you are enjoying this podcast, I encourage you to leave a rating and a review if you are interested in hearing more, and I will tell you what else I have to bring here. I enjoy talking about food and fitness and health and having a healthy relationship with food. I struggled with binge eating and disordered eating for many, many years, and I want to create a community of people who want to be healthy and have a healthy lifestyle. And enjoy a fitness that they enjoy and heal from an eating disorder or disordered eating. And that is why I'm here. So if you're listening on podcast, you can go ahead and follow. If you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you to subscribe and hit that bell so that you know when I drop the next episodes. And now I'm going to talk about just some fun life stuff that I'd like to chit chat with you guys about. So if you have listened before, the last 3 episodes, I had some nails on that I was having issues getting off. So I finally got them off. The acetone worked. I revisited a box of these press-on nails and it said that they're easy to take off. And I beg to differ. So the acetone worked. I was able to pry off the edge of it by my cuticle and like gracefully tip the bottle so that a few drops would drip down around the edge. And then I would just kind of like use my other nail and slowly scrape the adhesive off. And then I finally did that. And then I had a wedding to go to. And so I wanted to put on this darker color. So it's just a dark gray. And I'm really getting the hang of these things. So my biggest pet peeve, these are press-on nails. No glue required. It's all an adhesive that's already on the back of the nail. And my pet peeve was that I would go to wash my hair and hairs would get stuck around the back of the nail at the edge of the cuticle. And it was so frustrating to wash my hair. And when I put these on, I was actually kind of in a rush, but I held it down closest to the cuticle. And that really helped because then it would like taper down at the cuticle. And so there was no open edge for hairs to like get stuck under. And that has been great. Additionally, the books that I'm reading. First up, we have Death and Croissants. So this is a mystery novel, but it has an edge of comedy to it. And it's just one of those nice reads. It's like there's twists and turns and things you don't expect, but then there's humor in how it's written, and it's just one of those fun books to read. And I'm at the beginning of chapter 31, and there are 36 chapters, so nearly done with that. It was just fun. I'll link this down below if you guys want to check it out. And then this book, The Inimitable Jeeves, loaned to me from a friend. I didn't know what I was getting into when I was given this book to check out. Jeeves is a butler who works for a young man who's kind of fun and fancy free. Just kind of goes about life, not worrying about much. And so Jeeves is there to just kind of save his butt here and there. And I realized this when I looked this book up to link it for my last video that I mentioned this in. Might have been 2 or 3 episodes ago now. But each chapter is a short story. So I don't even know if I can call them chapters. They're just like short stories. They don't necessarily connect to one another. And each story I enjoy, but I was prepared to like settle into a book and just kind of let it roll open before me. And then I would walk the path. But it's just basically I've read 1 chapter per sitting because it's like it starts and it ends with each story, with each chapter. And so do I enjoy it? Yes. Am I a little disappointed? Yes. Because I just wanted I wanted to read the whole book to all just kind of like all tie together. But it's kind of fun. I think I said in the other episode, it's kind of like an early 1900s sitcom. That is how I would describe this. But once I'm done with Death and Croissants, like I said, I only have 6 chapters left. I'm going to be moving on to an Agatha Christie book. So I will chit chat about that when I start reading that. If you listened to last episode, you don't have to have listened to last episode to listen to me talk about this. In last episode, I had the weekend before watched the first season of Shadow and Bone on Netflix. I very much enjoyed it. Then that night of the last episode, I was going to be taking the other nails off, and I started season 2. And I didn't enjoy it as much. And I think that's just how I am with fantasy. Like I like the early part when it's not like too dark yet, and then it starts to get dark and it starts to get exciting. And then when it gets dark, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like this anymore. But I watched the second season, and there's a very minor subplot that I'm heavily invested in. There is, if you've watched Shadow and Bone, Matthias and Nina, the Fjerdan and the Heartrender, who are supposed to hate each other, but they want to be together. And that the situation is not resolved. And so they leave the second season allowing you to anticipate a third season. However, I went to Barnes & Noble the other day looking for a new book and ended up getting the Agatha Christie book. And I just kind of moseyed over to where I knew the Shadow and Bone books are. And there are 3 books. The first book is the first season. The second and third book are allegedly the second season. So I'm like, and it's known as the trilogy, so it doesn't appear there's room for a 4th book. However, in the second season of Shadow and Bone, there's almost reference, I like how they do this, to Six of Crows, which is, it's in the same universe. Six of Crows, there's 2 books, and Six of Crows falls after the 3 Shadow and Bone books. And one of the people I'm invested in their subplot is in Six of Crows. So I believe Six of Crows is technically on Netflix, but part of me wants to read the books instead of watch them. Don't spoil anything for me if you have watched Six of Crows. Please don't spoil it. Yes, so once I realized that Six of Crows falls after Shadow and Bone, I was like, okay, maybe I'll read the books and the subplot will be resolved and then I will be satisfied. So that's where I'm at. I have not started watching anything new. I am rewatching Wednesday for probably, who knows, the 10th time. I'm not really rewatching it. It's just on in the background because I enjoy it and I like having something on in the background like when I'm editing. And so that's what's happening. And that's all for now, folks. Thanks again for listening. If you missed last week's episode, I will pop it up here on screen for you to click, or I will link it down below in the show notes if you are listening on podcasts for you to listen to. And I will see you guys there.